I'd like to welcome to the stage AJ Eserjose. Are you here, AJ? Oh yeah, here we are. So AJ works for an organization called OT ISAC, and I'm sure you'll be telling everyone what that organization is about. And he's the regional director of that organization. And the title of the presentation, Beyond the Report, How OT Threat Intelligence Drives Safer Operations. Okay, AJ, all yours.
Hello, good afternoon. How's everyone? We're almost here. I think the beer, I can hear the beer and the wine preparing outside already. So, we just set this up. So again, my name is AJ Eserjose. I'm from OT ISAC. We're based in Singapore. First, before I proceed with my presentation, I'd like to thank Bob Fox and ARC Advisory for having us in this session. So we're here today because cyber threats in operational technology environments are no longer just a possibility. We all know they're a growing reality, yet many organizations still rely on a passive reports that don't lead to real change. So in this session, it's about challenging that. So we will explore what we observe within our community on how we can move beyond the report. So to make the threat intelligence that most asset owners, stakeholders within the ICS and OT community, use of the threat intel reports become more meaningful, actionable intelligence, and relevant to real-world defense. So there are three key takeaways that I'm hoping that you learn after this talk. First is to understand why traditional reports or threat reports fall short in operational technology environments, and what needs to change to make them operationally useful. Second is learn from the real-world APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, case. So I'm doing the case study for UNC 3886, where they didn't use ransomware or data theft, but still compromised critical infrastructure using stealthy, persistent tactics. And lastly, to share with you, to consider on what are the practical steps to turn into threat intelligence into team-driven capability is strengthening detection, response, and collaboration across IT and OT functions. So why go beyond report? That's the first question. So let's start by reflecting on how most organizations currently engage with threat intelligence. So traditional threat reports, they are passive awareness. So in many cases, these reports are treated like weather forecasts. We read them, we nod, and we file them away. So there's a value in being informed, of course, but awareness alone doesn't change outcomes. So this approach might work in IT, but in operational technology, when patches can be pushed regularly and automated tools can manage exposure. But in OT environments, safety, reliability, and uptime are non-negotiable. And that's not enough. So OT requires a different mindset on active engagement. Why? Because in OT, you can't patch immediately without considering operational downtime. You often deal with legacy systems that don't support modern security controls. Even a small misstep can affect worker safety or physical assets. So threat intelligence must go beyond consumption and into adoption, and it must become something you can act on, so not just reading an information. OT environments require proactive adoption. So as I've said earlier, you have to be able to, the threat reports that you consume will be able to give you an action. What's the next action after reading this? And the real value comes when your intelligence or threat reports shape your detections, your response, not IT response, but your OT and ICS team response, the engineers. So if something happens, malicious behavior, with your equipment, your engineers would be able to respond if that happens. Because a lot of times what we observe in the last few, last few years, IT team are trying to adopt the incident response they have in the playbook to OT team. There are similarities, but it will be different. And then lastly, of course, system hardening. So the question is that, can the intelligence or report that you consume help you reduce risk before an attack even happens? So this could mean identifying misconfigurations, prioritizing compensating controls, or reviewing vendor settings in light of new threats. So I think in summary for this, it is really important that the goal is to integrate that intelligence into the way you operate, monitor, and defend your systems. So let's bring this conversation to life with a real-world example. So UNC 3886, that is the name of a threat group. It's a highly sophisticated APT, Advanced Persistent Threat Group, named for one thing, persistence without noise. So imagine you are in your factory plant, okay? You go someone who are threats that they blend with your employees. You would not know that they're not part of the team, but they just walk very simply with keys, in your manufacturing plant. That's what UNC 3886 is. They are not in for the quick payout. What they're doing is for a long-term covert access. So the character for UNC 3886, what makes it more dangerous is because their intention is not ransomware, not even public data breaches, unlike what you've been seeing in the news. So instead, they aim for a deep, silent infiltration remaining undetected in critical systems for months, and sometimes even longer. So they abuse legitimate and everyday administrative tools, things your IT and OT teams use every day. So that includes tools used for system maintenance, remote access, and management consoles. Because they blend into the background, they evade traditional security measures, signature-based antivirus, standard endpoint detection, or firewall alerts. So it just tells us one thing. We cannot rely solely on tools that detect known threats. We need to focus on behavioral-based detection, understanding how attackers move, what they exploit, and what tactics they use to hide in plain sight. So this is specifically true in OT environments, where these native tools often have elevated privileges and where security blind spots still exist due to legacy systems. So UNC 3886 is not a science fiction. If you hear the news in Straits Times, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore have announced on this APT group twice, I think. It's not by theory. It's not happening elsewhere. It's happening here in our region. So it's a real group using real tactics, targeting industrial sector that looks like, I would say, a lot like ours, So, what makes it more dangerous is because they don't break in with zero-day or all malware explosions. They log in quietly through misconfigurations, default credentials, and under-monitored systems. So OT intelligence or threat intelligence, they are the map. The real-world defense is the journey. So the question is that how do we turn the OT threat intelligence into something that actually help us defend critical infrastructure? Because from one incident we could learn from, and we base from the facts that was lessons learned that was published. Now, the gap between threat intelligence and operational security, I just want to highlight, is that many teams receive threat intel reports. So in most organization, asset owners and operators, they would have IT cybersecurity team. And then you have instrument engineers, your operations on the other side, and your CISO. Most of the time, in most organizations, CISOs are IT security background experience. So regardless if there's any new vulnerabilities that was published, your IT security would consume threat actor activity or emerging technique, procedure these threat actors are using. In most cases, this report sits in inbox. They don't reach the engineering team. Or maybe it's not even translated into prioritized actions. So this disconnect creates a false sense of awareness, as if you're reading a threat somehow means we're ready for it. So what we really need is a structured integration, which means that how does this threat affect our systems? And which teams need to be informed? Or if I receive this information, what my IT team can do and what does my OT team can do? And why OT environments are very, very unique targets is that unlike IT, OT systems can't always be patched on short notice. In most cases in manufacturing or energy sector, you have legacy system that sits there for for more than 20 years. So they have legacy devices, long life cycles, and strict uptime requirements. So a reboot isn't just inconvenient, it could disrupt production or compromise safety. Now, attackers understand this. And that's why OT environments are attractive targets, because they are more unmanaged or forgotten assets. Remote access tools are often misconfigured, and the supply chain exposures are common entry points, at least from our observation. And then the case study for UNC 3886 attack on critical infrastructure is a great example of how attackers exploit the IT and OT gap. So the thing is, because they didn't exploit directly the PLC, they use known tools, as I've mentioned earlier, default configurations and under-monitored systems. So this case, or this APT group, forced us to ask, how many systems in our environment could be misused in the same way? Second is that, are we tracking attacker behavior or not just artifacts like malware hashes? And are we updating our defenses based on TTPs, not just CVEs? You can have a lot of CVEs, but the thing is that how can you act from that CVEs? Regardless, even if it has recommendations, you have to be proactive, like really looking into how is it applicable or fit in to our organization. So I'm not sure, I hope you see it clearly. So let's talk about how we turn OT threat intelligence into meaningful action. So this is in response to the UNC 3886, what we published within our OT ISAC community. So their operations highlight how important it is for us to look beyond traditional threat reports and focus on behavioral indicators and cross-functional coordination. So you see, the first one is valid accounts, the threat ID on valid accounts, not malware, okay, to move around. This is a key lesson for us. In OT environments, we often still see default, shared, or weak credentials, especially on devices like HMIs, PLCs, and that becomes a huge risk. So on the IT side, we have highlighted, what your IT team can do in response to this. So they should be enforcing enterprise-wide password policies and actively monitoring for strange login behavior, particularly from jump servers that can bridge into OT networks. And then for your OT team, it's about auditing and cleaning up shared or legacy accounts. If possible, organizations could consider be rolling out a multi-factor authentication or any remote access tools used in the OT space. If you're familiar with OTSEP, 2 weeks ago that has happened, there was a presentation from one of the member from ISA, and he highlighted that he's not a big fan of remote access, just to share with you, at least in the OT environments, yeah. And then second is the MITRE threat ID 1021. So it highlights the remote services. So the second behavior we see in this threat actor is the abuse of remote services. So it's like RDP and SSH for lateral movement. In many facilities, engineering workstations still allow remote access for convenience, but it also creates a pathway for attackers. So we have highlighted there what our IT team can do. They can help setting up anomaly detection for remote logins and making sure access to ICS zones is properly segmented at the network level. And then for OT team, in turn, should limit when and how remote sessions are allowed. So not all activities. So this visibility is crucial, and these joint actions help us to shrink the attack surface. The word is shrink. So it doesn't guarantee that it's fully 100% secured. So the goal is to at least minimize the risk. And then as we continue, the threat ID 1040, the network sniffing, is the act of passively capturing traffic on a network. So for adversaries, it allows them to harvest credentials, map out ICS protocols like Modbus, and prepare for other further exploitation, all without making a sound. So in OT, these protocols are rarely encrypted. And devices often trust anything on the network, and that makes them prime, so target for this kind of reconnaissance. So for IT side, IT team should deploy NDR, which is the network detection and response solutions that can identify sniffing behaviors, includes alerting with passive packet collection tools, that could be considered in play. And then the OT side, the priority is validating network visibility. And then the last one is the process injection, which is the threat ID 1055. This is another stealthy technique. Injecting malicious code into legitimate process so it runs undetected. In the OT context, this often means injected into a trusted SCADA or HMI applications. So if successful, the attackers get to hide in plain sight, operating under the guise of legitimate process. So from an IT security perspective, this is where the endpoint detection tools can be a memory analysis comes into play. They should also monitor OT jump hosts for suspicious behavior that could indicate injection attempts. And then for the OT side, it's critical that they reduce the attack surface by limiting app privileges, especially on engineering workstations. So this is a sample of how we support our members, like getting, that it's raining. You know that there will be a typhoon, so that's information. But what's the response? Getting ready when the typhoon hits your area. I think to put that in analogy. So I want to highlight the key elements of a threat intel that that creates value. Number one is the attacker behavior patterns. Understanding attacker behavior gives us lens into their tactics, techniques, and procedures. So it allows you to anticipate what might come next, not just to react what already happened. So this is where OT threat intel becomes truly valuable because we're very much focused on the behavior. Second is the protocol misuse. In OT world, native protocol abuse is a major issue. So many attacks don't involve into malware at all. They use legitimate industrial protocols like Modbus, DNP3 in a ways that we never intended to be used. So the threat intel should help us understand these protocols abuses, so we can build detection rules that go beyond signature matching and look beyond the behavior of this protocol. So another keyword there for that second is the behavior, because behavior is really important, when protecting your OT, environment. And then also contextualize mapping to frameworks. So it will help you understand when you have the right frameworks that mostly common use, which is MITRE ATT&CK for ICS or embed. It could give you information on what part of your system is affected, what behaviors to monitor, and what mitigations you can put in place. And the contextual, the one that I've shared earlier is called contextual mapping that helps you prioritize defenses, plan tabletop exercise, and ensure that IT and OT teams are speaking at the same language. Because when you're managing OT environments, you have a lot of devices. The question is that which one I will prioritize. which one or the crown jewels that if this is being compromised, it could impact safety. Not data breach, but safety. And that is the utmost priority for OT security. So what are the key metrics for safer operations in relevance with OT cybersecurity? Time to detect and respond. So faster detections means faster containment, reducing operational impact. So this is often where joint IT and OT team visibility makes a measurable difference. And next is the threat-informed patch prioritization. As I've mentioned earlier, you're not going to patch all your devices. But, and it's not about patching everything. It's about, identifying what are the most critical devices that we have to look into. A major win is the reduction of exposed services as well. So every exposed port is a potential entry point, especially when tied to legacy protocols or internet-facing assets. Then we also have an exercise-based real-world threat scenarios. So running tabletop exercises based on real case incidents are more beneficial rather than just thinking of theoretical scenarios. Within the OT ISAC, we've run tabletop exercises in incident response with our members, and most of the time we use the past incidents that really impacted the OT because it's very less incident that really compromised directly the OT. Most of the time, they target the IT, and then the impact is in OT. So we designed the tabletop exercise, and organizations should be really looking into that. Like, this is really happening, what our team, or how our team will respond. So finally, also, we want to see an increase in collaboration and report consumption. So metrics here include cross-team participation in briefings, actions, and what are the actions taken from the shared reports and feedback loops. Now, the type of intelligence that matter, that are critical for asset owners, is to really highlight how it can help you make decisions and take steps within the realities of OT environment. So IOC's indicators of compromise are linked to OT assets. So it has to be, these aren't just a generic indicators of compromise, but ones relevant to PLCs, HMIs, and OT protocols. So I think that's one of the key elements that an OT threat shared intelligence, should be in. And then TTPs, their techniques, their behavior. We need to understand how that it manifests in ICS, like abuse of engineering workstation or protocol tunneling. Also, sector-specific threats also matter because it's not one size fits all. What's useful for aviation sector may not be useful for energy companies because they use different protocols, they have different devices. And then, of course, the post-incident playbooks, they are especially valuable. So this should not be just summaries, but it should give you a blueprint for what you work, what have failed, and how others responded in similar environments. So, just to summarize, intelligence matters on how we can act on it, not just by consuming it. So I wanted to share you, this is a sample of OT ISAC threat reports. It is designed to deliver a practical, timely, and actionable threat intel. So for example, we recently, this was published in May, an aviation sector report shows a surge in phishing and command injection attacks targeting flight systems and ground infrastructure, while the energy sector report highlights targeting exploitation of public-facing apps and unauthorized command messages over industrial protocols like Modbus and DNP3. So if you can see, the report offer value in multiple ways. So they map the techniques to actual incidents and include confidence ratings to guide priorities, to prioritize. And then they break down on the root cause and offer practical lessons learned. such as improving segmentation, deploying MFA, and patching OT systems, looking into it. And then most importantly is that they give security teams the context they need to build better detection. And they also close the gap between intelligence and operational action. We would include as well, based from those TTPs, what are the incidents or where it has been exploited. So I think Malaysia, Delta Airlines, we mapped out and what is the impact and then what are the behavioral techniques that was used on that incident. So, for us, for OT ISAC, we're a member-driven organization. A collaborative analysis of exposed OT devices, the success of what we do based from the effort from our members as well. So these are the type of collaboration that is happening within our community. It demonstrates continuous feedback loops and practical lessons learned. Now, there are also challenges in collaboration. I think on the left, we highlight those challenges. Many organizations face culture and competitive barriers. Like, why would I share information to another manufacturing sector? So there's a hesitation due to concerns over reputation, industry rivalry, and internal policy. And even the willingness, some lack of resources or capacity to analyze and act on the intel they receive. There's also regulatory constraints and data sensitivity. Even the compliance matters. So especially in highly regulated sectors. So I think the most commonly what we observe is the translation gap between the technical insights and what operation teams needs to do with them. So we've highlighted this, and at the same time, the good news is that we also see enablers that make sharing work. So using structured formats to ensure information is both machine and readable, actionable. For IT cybersecurity team, they would understand IOCs, those technical terms. But when you speak to your engineer, you have to use their language. Everybody, I would say that not everybody understands cybersecurity, but everybody knows what is safety. So when it comes to OT environment, you have to speak as if you're prioritizing, not as if, you're prioritizing safety. We do, regular community calls and roundtables to keep conversations going. Joint exercise, turn theory into, practice, helping teams improve their OT security program. So you might be asking, what is OT ISAC, and why I might be able to, to share this presentation with you. So we're part of the Singapore OT Master Plan. We facilitate the threat of information focused on OT, and we're a nonprofit organization. So we're based here in Singapore. So we'd like to give you a more, information about that maybe after our talk. But the Singapore OT Master Plan, you can download it in CSA website. And also, we scale across sector. So we are engaged and we're part of the bigger, broader community that help us to gather more data in cross-sharing on what are the threats, vulnerabilities that we observe. So just 3 call to action from passive to proactive. I think don't just read the report, act on it. It's really important. Contribute to your community. I learned a lot with the community, with practitioners, rather than just like, reading the books or reading the news. So get involved and be part of the community, and then build internal process to absorb, assess, and act. And lastly, embrace threat intelligence as a team sport. It's not only for IT cybersecurity, but it's for the whole organization. Whole organization should be able to benefit from that, because it should go back to the business needs. So as we close, I want you to leave, with one key message. Cybersecurity is, And OT is not just a technical challenge, it's a team effort. So, OT ISAC exists to support this mission. So if you're already part of this journey, thank you for being an active contributor. If you're new to this space, we welcome you to join us. Your perspective, your experience, and your voice matter. So again, and thank you for listening for the session. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, AJ.